Hello, class. Welcome back to our Counting on Grace unit. Today we are on Lesson 10. We will be reading chapters 17 and 18. I just hope that I can read this book well while wearing my shades. Here we go. Chapter 17. Oh, by the way, again, the book that we are reading today is Counting on Grace by Elizabeth Winthrop. Thank you very much. Chapter 17. The Flash. The man starts to unpack his equipment. He must be stronger than he looks to be lugging all this stuff on and off trains and up 3 flights of stairs to the spinning room. He slides a leather pouch off his shoulder and lowers it to the ground, ever so slowly, as if it's got some kind of treasure inside. Then he unpacks a wooden box with a tube that points straight out of the middle. I can read the name on it, and it has the same first letters as mine. Graflex, it says. He props Mr. Graflex up on top of a spindly-looking set of legs, splayed out in 3 directions like a dog trying to stop itself on a hill. Then he comes over to me. "My name is Lewis Hine," he says, and sticks out his hand. The ends of his fingers are stained all brown-yellow the way my Pepe's were from his cigarettes. I drop into a curtsy. The mill is a strange place to be curtsying. But I've got 2 new cuts on the top of my right hand and one on the inside, and I don't need to stir them up. His hat tilted to the side, he leans over close, but I pull away quick. He's a strange one. It turns out he is just asking my name. Imagine that, a grown man wanting to know my name. "Grace," I say, my voice pitched proper so he can hear it through the buzzing in the room. "How old are you?" This is a trick question, and I know the answer just fine. 14, I say without a blink. Really? You don't look that old. You must be about 48 inches tall. How do you know? He talks to me easy the way Arthur does, so it don't feel strange to be asking him questions. I can see Arthur out of the corner of my eye watching us the whole time, and I like that, for once, Arthur don't know what's going on, and I do. I measure you against my vest buttons. You come up to number 3. That makes you 4 feet tall. Now, why would this man care how tall I am? Maybe the head office wants to know the size of the workers. I hope that's not some new way of figuring out how old we are. What are you going to do with me? I ask. Take your picture, that's all. Have you ever had your picture taken? Will it hurt? No, Grace. There will be a flash for a second, which will make your eyes sparkle because the room will be 1,000 times brighter than it's ever been before. Don't blink if you can help it. Now I need you to stand here, he says, and sets me up in front of Marie. I lean against her and rest my arm on her threadboard. When I look up, a handle's popped up out of the top of Mr. Graflex, and Mr. Hine is peering down inside like he's looking for something. The tube sticking out has a big old eye at the end of it, and that's sliding out toward me, and then moving away again. I stick out my tongue at it, and when he looks up again, he's chuckling to himself. So he must have seen me, even though he was staring down into Mr. Graflex's innards. He goes around to the front of the camera and flips a little lever, no bigger than a lappet, right on the edge of the eye. I walk over to watch. Grace, I meant you to stay by the frame, he says. Now I'll have to focus again. I reach out and touch the black folds that push the eye back and forth. My father's accordion looks like this. Those are the bellows, he says. Now when you go back to your machine, don't stand too close. I don't want you to hurt yourself. I laugh. Marie won't hurt me, I tell him. She's my good girl. He looks confused. My frame. You've got Monsieur Graflex, and I've got Mademoiselle Marie. You don't miss much, do you, Mademoiselle Grace, he says, and he's smiling again. No, I don't, I say. I wish my mother would tell me something like that. What's in your pocket? He glances around nervously. Don't worry. French Johnny ain't paying no attention, I tell him. He's working on Delia's clearing boards. She's my sister, and she's got 2 of the worst frames in the room. What's in your pocket? I ask again. He slides out the most perfect little notebook I've ever seen, and a pencil. I'm taking notes. About me? Yes, your name and height and the age you say you are. You take notes in your pocket? It's a trick I learned a long time ago. I keep the pencil pressed against the paper, and the paper pressed against my leg bone. Most times I can read what I've written. Can you read? Sure. I can count and spell, too. Give me the little book and I'll show you. He pulls it out and hands it to me. I squat down to write my name with his nubbly pencil, but just like he said, it's there already. Miss Leslie would tell him his writing is nothing but a messy scribble, but I can make it out. Grace, 48 inches, says she's 14. He's been doing these notes the whole time we've been talking with his hand hidden in his pocket. How many times do you doff? He asks. He's pulling a black square thing out of his shoulder pouch. 12. That's a lot. My mother is top spinner and she's got 6 frames. 6 times 2 makes 12 sides. 136 bobbins to a side times 12 makes 1,632. He looks surprised by how high I can count. How many of you kids work in the mill? About 20 or so. Put down their names and ages for me, he says. He's already figured out how to make his voice cross under the noise in the room. Now he's opening the back of the camera, sliding in the metal square from his pouch, and I can tell his hands know what they're doing. He's as fast with his picture-taking machine as my mare is with her frames. Arthur, I write, 12. Dougie, 10. He just started last week. Henry told us it put Miss Leslie in one of her bad moods when French Johnny come for him. Bridget, 13. Her name looks funny, but I keep going. The little pencil keeps digging into the cut on the inside of my hand, but I pay no mind. My letters are slanting the way Miss Leslie likes, but each one takes such a long time. If Arthur was the one doing the writing, he'd be finished by now. You go to school? Mr. Hine asks. Not no more. But Miss Leslie gives me and Arthur lessons on Sundays. Now I'm the one checking to see who's listening to us. I won't tell about your pocket notes if you don't tell about my schooling. Deal, he says. I'd like to meet this Miss Leslie. Now he's shaking some white powder like flour onto a flat box on the floor. The school's up the hill, I tell him. I tuck the notebook deep into the folds of my skirt because I can feel my mare poking her head around every time she gets to the end of a row. Edwin is down ready to be doffed, and Therese is going to be right behind. Looks like I'll be working through the break, but I don't care right now. I love the little notebook so much I want to steal it. Grace, do you know a boarding house in town where I can spend the night? We take boarders, I say, and my mind is racing ahead. This man with his tie and his suit, he looks richer than the other ones who stayed in Pepe's bed. But it's $1, I shout louder than I mean to. He don't seem to blink at the price, but the light is reflecting off his glasses so I can't really see his eyes. And you have to pay before you eat. That'll be fine. Where do you live? Up on French Hill, the Forestier place. Everybody in town knows where it is. I want to turn somersaults. Won't my mare be pleased when she finds out? A whole $1 coming into the house because of me. Time to give it back, he says with his hand out. He means the notebook. I haven't written all the names yet. I can get the rest of them later. He's talking fast now, his voice close to my ear. Grace, I want to take a picture of all the kids in the mill. Can you get them to meet me after work? Where? He talks to me as if we were both workers and we have a job to do, together. Outside the mill gates, can you do that? Sure, I say with a shrug, but I'm not sure. We all scatter like bugs when the mill bell rings. I'll make Arthur help me. French Johnny is starting down the road toward us. Give the notebook back now. I wish I had one of these, I say, but I hand him the little book and it disappears quick into his pocket. He sets me back up in the same place, leaning against Marie. French Johnny and my mare almost crash into each other at the end of the row, and now they're both headed our way. 3 of my frames are waiting on Grace, my mare says loudly. You're taking too much time, mister. Mr. Hine ain't looking at me. He's staring back down into the hood at the top of the camera and making that eye scoot forward and back again. Finally, it stops. We stare at each other. I can see a little tiny me in the eye at the end of the tube, and for a second, this scared feeling fills up my throat. Stand away, all of you, he says to the others, and his chin is tucked so far down that his voice sounds like it's coming from under a rock. My mare and French Johnny pull off to the side as if the 3-legged dog with its funny box head might bite them. I'm glad I'm resting against Marie. She makes me feel safe. Hold very still, Grace. Mr. Hine pulls a black square thing straight up from the back of the camera, just as he calls to me in a sharp voice. Keep your eyes open as long as you can. Don't you hurt her, I hear my mother say, and the eye of the camera opens wide suddenly as if it means to gobble me up. Then everything happens at once. With one hand, he throws a match onto the powder while he squeezes a black bulb at the end of a cord with the other. There's a flash and everything goes white, like something has blown up right in the middle of my eyeballs. Smoke tickles my nose. Inside my closed eyes, I can see circles floating out wider and wider from a middle black dot. That's the way an echo would look if you could draw it, I think. "What the devil was that?" roars French Johnny. "Grace, open your eyes," my mother shouts in my ear, shaking me all the while. "She's blind! She can't see!" "She's fine," says Mr. Hine, his voice near now, and I feel his hand come to rest on the top of my head. "Don't worry, Mrs. Forcier." I like them all squabbling over me for that moment, but I know I can't wait no longer, so I open my eyes. First I see something that looks like the ghost of Mr. Hine, hunched over his camera just at the moment when he squeezed that bulb and the light flashed. But he's not there no more. He's right beside me, talking over my head to French Johnny. The ghost picture fades, and next I make out Arthur, who's standing by his frame for real. He's mouthing some words at me over and over again, and pointing at Mr. Hine's back. "He's the one," Arthur's saying, and suddenly I know what he means. Mr. Hine is the answer to our letter. All right. Chapter 18, The Group Picture. My mare cuffs me on the head when she finds I didn't go blind. I barely feel it, but there is no reason to hit me. I was just doing what French Johnny and Mr. Hine told me to do. When Mr. Hine says he only has a couple more pictures to take, French Johnny tells him to pack up his equipment and move on out. It was the flash and the smoke that scared French Johnny the most. Fire can gobble up a mill in no time, because there's so much to burn. All that cotton dust in the air and the threads whirling around just waiting for some little spark to light on them. And suddenly, like things clicking into place in the back of my brain, I remember Mr. Wilson getting on the train that morning. So French Johnny was in charge, and he's the one who let in Mr. Hine. And if the mill had burned down when Mr. Wilson was away, then fat French Johnny was going to be in a big barrel of trouble. "That man is fou, complimentaire fou," mutters ma mère. I stop in my tracks to tell her the good news. I apologize about my poor French, by the way. "Mr. Hine is boarding with us tonight. He knows he's got to pay before he eats." "Well, that'll make up some of the money he stole from our paycheck fooling with you," she says. Here is the big surprise. "It'll make up more than you think, ma mère," I say. "I told him he had to pay $1, and he said fine, he'd be there." She stares at me with a little look that says, "Well, Grace, sometimes maybe I can count on you." She don't say it out loud, but her face says it. At least that's what I decide to think. When Arthur passes me in the row, he says, "I was right, wasn't I? He's the one." "He wants to get all the kids together after work to take a picture. You tell them." "Where?" I have to think fast. "Around the front side, between the big door and the little hill." The mill owners are the only ones who ever use that front door. Arthur nods and moves away quick when his mother waves to him. It ain't till later when I am catching up with my doffing that I think of something terrible. If Arthur is right about Mr. Hine being the answer to the letter, then that committee might shut down the mill and we won't have jobs no more. And this Mr. Hine is spending the night in our house, in Pepe's bed. What if he tells Mamère what he's trying to do? He won't tell Mamère. He'll just make secret notes in his little book. Yes, he will. He'll tell her and she'll order him out of the house. So what? As long as we got his $1, who cares about Mr. Hine? But I like him. I want to talk to him more. I want to see if he'll give me a notebook to write in. And what if he tells Mamère about the letter? Who cares about the letter? It was signed with that long word. Miss Leslie said nobody would ever guess who wrote it. Mamère will know. She knows Miss Leslie wants to keep us kids out of the mill, and she hates her. If she gets Miss Leslie fired, then I can't go to school no more. All this thinking is what my bad brain does. It makes me forget where I am, so sure enough, Edwin's clearing board fills up and 10 ends in a row go down. I yell to Mamère, who throws the shipper handle with such a look and shoves me aside the way she does when she wants to piece up fast as possible. Mr. Hine's $1 is getting used up before it even hits our kitchen table. After that, I shut my brain down. I don't let myself think about anything but counting bobbins. Even so, there is no way to make up all the time lost on Mamère's Hank clock, and there is nobody to blame for that but me. When the closing bell goes, I scoot over to Arthur and we race down the stairs before anybody can stop us. Mr. Hine is waiting around the corner of the mill when Arthur and I lead the pack of kids past the gate and down a little path. "Where are you all going?" the guard yells after us. "To play a game," I yell back, and he don't pay us no mind after that. "Grace," Mr. Lewis Hine says first thing, "I need you to help me." Just like we are old friends and I've been helping him for years. The others stare at me in surprise. This man needs Grace, the bumbling left-handed doffer who's always in trouble, they're thinking. "Yes, Mr. Hine," I say smartly. "Is everybody here?" I look around and count. 17. Just about, as many as Arthur and I can get. Delia's not here, but that's fine with me. She'll be helping take Mamer's mind off me. "I'll do the boys first, it settles them down," he says in a low voice, as he unpacks Mr. Graflex from his carrying box. He has a hurrying nature to him, and I know why. If he gets caught with that camera again anywhere near the mill, he'll probably get arrested. "Arrange them against the brick wall between the door and the windows. Shortest in the front. I'll want their names and ages before they leave." The only reason the boys pay me any mind is because they aren't sure about this man, and they are specially careful around the camera. But they do keep horsing around and falling over one another in shifting places. Their hats are all skewed funny. Hubert and Pierre Gagnon lounge about with their arms around each other's shoulders and their chins stuck out, pretending this picture-taking happens every day. Felix stands in front with his arms crossed and his legs spread, looking like he owns the mill. Arthur sets himself up in the back, acting as if he's the only person in the world, just the way he does when he's got a book in his hand. He stands straight up at attention and waits with a frown on his face, like a soldier boy about to be shot. When Mr. Hine comes up behind me, he uses his voice to still them. Maybe he was a teacher before he started the picture-taking business, because a bunch of kids don't seem to bother him one bit. "I'm going to count backwards from 3, he explains to the boys. "Once I focus the lens, you all must stay absolutely still. You'll see me pull a black shade out of the side of the camera. That's the dark slide. At that moment, the negative is ready to be exposed. Once I squeeze the little black bulb with my right hand, you'll see me push that shade back in again. Then you can relax." They nod, serious now, as if they understand one word he's saying. "Are you all ready?" They take up their positions. He rearranges Julian to stand in back of Dougie, and this time they stay put. "It's not going to hurt them, is it?" Bridget asks me, her hands up shielding her eyes. "Nah," I say like I know all about it. "He's not even using the flash this time the way he did with me." Just as he said, he pulls the slide out and slams it back in so quick that nobody knows he's all done, and they stay frozen. "Done, boys," he says with his notebook out now. "Starting in the back now," he points at Arthur. "I want your name, your age, your job, and how long you've worked in the mill." "Is this for the head office?" Hubert asks. Mr. Hine don't answer the question, because he's too busy scribbling down Arthur Trottier, age 12, Doffer, 3 months. All right, I hope you enjoyed today's reading. Make sure that you answer the questions available to you in Google Classroom. Make a great day, everyone.